afternoon, second graders, and welcome to today's grammar lesson. Today we'll be learning about shades of meaning among closely related verbs and adjectives. Let's begin. Here is our shades of meaning anchor chart that we will be making together. So let's find out what shades of meaning means. It means it is words that are similar. I'm going to all caps. Similar. But grow in intensity. So words that get more intense. Make all our eyes the same. Okay, words that are similar but grow in intensity. Let's go over some examples of shades of meaning. So here we're going to write examples. Okay, I'm going to move the camera down just a bit. So let's think of some examples of what shades of meaning are for, let's do adjectives first. So from here you can see on our anchor chart, I have an arrow pointing from weakest to strongest. So let's think of some adjectives that get more intense as we describe them. So for example, we could start with afraid. When you feel afraid, then you could feel scared, which is more intense than afraid, and then move on to frightened. When you feel frightened, that's more intense than scared. And lastly, more intense than frightened would be terrified. Maybe you were terrified when you visited a haunted house. I'm gonna draw a cute little ghost showing terrified. Boo! Okay, our next one, let's start with big. Now, take a minute and think about it. What could be more intense than big? Oh, I know. Giant. More intense, so from weakest to strongest, big, giant, enormous would be more intense than big and giant. And something more intense than enormous, gigantic. Squiggly. Let's think of like a little bush, and then maybe a little tree. And then think of a ginormous tree, like a big old Christmas tree. It gets bigger as you go. Okay, let's think of one more adjective that we could think of for shades of meaning. Let's start with warm. Something that's warm. I can think of maybe the sun. Here's a little picture of a sun. Something more intense than warm would be toasty. More intense than toasty would be hot. Oh boy, we're getting more intense. Something more intense than hot would be scorching. Scorching hot. I'm going to use my orange marker here to draw some flames. It kind of looks like flames. I tried. Here's some red to make it flaming. Some scorching flames. All right, next we're going to make examples of verbs. So here are all adjectives. On the bottom half of our anchor chart, let's go over some verbs, so actions that get stronger as we list. So let's start with toss, as if you've tossed me a ball. I'll draw a little ball. Okay. Now, what's more intense than toss? Hurl. Maybe you hurled a ball. Next, more intense would be throw. Maybe you threw a football. Something more intense than throwing would be pitching. Pitching is much faster. Pitch. Let's draw a baseball. Hopefully that looks like a baseball. Let's go over another example of a verb getting more intense. Words that are similar but more intense. Let's try stroll. You're strolling in the park. Something more intense than strolling, stronger, going down the list, would be jog. You're getting a little bit faster. What's a little bit faster than jogging? Running. Running. And something most intense than all three of these verbs would be sprinting. Maybe you sprint across a running track. Let's draw some wind. Sprinting. Okay. And our last example for a verb will be jump. Now let's think of something more intense than jumping. Could be hopping. So hop, like a little bunny. I'll draw a little bunny here. Oh gosh, not the best bunny I've ever drawn, but just to make this a little bit more interesting. Bunny. Okay, something more intense than hopping would be skipping. And more intense, most and strongest would be leaping. Maybe like a frog. I'm not going to try drawing a frog. But you guys get the idea of how when you move down the list of your verbs or your adjectives here, that they get more intense, they get stronger as you go down the list. Now, writers actually use these types of words, some of these examples, so that they can describe their story maybe in just different words, so they're not using the same words over and over. And maybe things could be more intense in their story, so some of their, let's think of like their plots could be more intense as the story goes on. All right, so this is our Shades of Meaning video. Hope that you have a clear idea of what it means to understand Shades of Meaning. I will post this anchor chart on our Google Classroom for you to look at if you need to. All right, have a good day.